Everyone, welcome. I'm Fridays with Freddie. Fred, I'm going to set today's conversation up because I want to get your thoughts and opinions on it. So I've been spending a lot of time these last few months with leaders in various institutions, small and large, and I'm seeing a pretty consistent trend. To some extent, it's fairly obvious, but it really stood out to me these last few meetings I had. Matt and I went to Boston recently, met with a big school. What I'm seeing is more and more leaders are inheriting a practice, right? They weren't the person who bought in the case of technology, right? They weren't the CIO who bought the technology. They weren't the CIO who hired all these people. They weren't the CIO when the SIS got put in and it was a lift and shift and it was done a crappy job. They were some other role, or maybe they were at some other school. Now they're the CIO. So they've inherited a bunch of stuff. They've inherited people, they've inherited technology, they've inherited politics. And here they are in this new role, and everyone is beating down on them going, IT sucks, IT sucks. When is IT going to get their act together? So they have the best intent, which is, hey, I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to be that change agent, but give me some time to wrap my head around this, get this thing under control. I feel for them because they have a vision, but it's really hard to make that vision a reality when the train was already moving and half the carts were off the track. And now they're playing train conductor and train engineer and. Let's talk through how you would go about it. How would you recommend they go about it? And I'll share a couple thoughts along the way.
Yeah, so I've observed, a good number of CIOs, existing ones, new ones, turnaround ones that had exactly those types of challenges. Now, first of all, look, this is a leadership position. What I would say is, I think at the highest level, there's already a very big difference between when you say inherit. So initially, when you said inherit, I was thinking, well, maybe, okay, do you mean I'm already inside? I used to be the deputy CIO, or maybe I was the head of infrastructure or the head of enterprise applications, and now I get elevated into that role versus coming in from the outside. I would say that 90% of the people that get hired into a position usually come from the outside, but there is a significant number of internal hires or promotions, if you want to call it that. That is a different flavor, right? Because I think the people that get promoted internally will have, in addition to all of those things that you're talking about, they will have an easier time because they kind of understand.
They know the lay of the land. Yeah.
They know the lay of the land. That might also be a weakness, by the way, right? You might be
For
blind
sure.
to certain things. But the internal hire, the internal promotion really is a more accurate description, has to do a switch, which I've seen in practice is very difficult for a lot of people. A switch from, I used to be on this side, I'm now on the other side. I have a new set of responsibility. And most of the people that report to me used to be my peers, right? And the institution has a certain view of me, a certain understanding. They might love me, but you're now in a different role. So I think we should keep that one aside and just focus on the external hires. I think first and foremost, Joe, you need to have a plan, right? We all know about the famous 100-day execution plan. I think everybody needs to have that plan. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be baked in, but you need to have a plan when you walk into a new organization. And a prerequisite to that plan is you doing your due diligence while you're going through the hiring process to understand what you're walking into. Sometimes we get too excited about being hired and not looking, is there the right alignment? Am I walking into a position? Am I walking into an institution that has the things in place for me to be successful? Now, I myself, for example, love walking into what I call the shops on fire or the shops with a challenge. And if you look at my history, you'll see that, I've gone from place to place, and usually it's because I focus on what needs to get fixed. We get that fixed. We move it to the next level. And then, just hand holding it, moving forward for a lot of institutions, that's not really what I like to do. I like to, okay, give me a big challenge. I'll fix the challenge, set you up for success, and then move on. If you're not that, you got to be very careful, right? Because if you are excited, hey, I'm going to be hired by college X, Y, and Z, and you don't know if you have the right resources, if you have the right culture, if you have the right leadership, meaning right, CIO reports to someone, right? We believe that.
And the CIO has people reporting to them, right?
And reporting to them, right? Do you have the right horses to move things forward? You need to try to find out as much as you can before you get hired so that you have eyes wide open and then can start executing on a 100-day plan. So a 100-day plan, really, if we wanted to give our listeners and our audience something of value, let's divide it into 3 buckets.
Okay.
You have, number one, you have the high-performing school, the high-performing organization. The big schools, been around, well-funded, mature in their processes. They got the latest tools. When they buy a new tool, it comes with, hey, how many resources do you need to support that tool? Let's call that the high-performing schools. I would put the big state schools, the well-funded R1s. University of Arizona, to me, is one of the lighthouses in this regard. The second type of school is a very competent school. The IT shop does everything that it needs to do. The CIO is respected. They're neither seen as, wow, this is the most innovative shop ever, or there are some challenges in their execution. It's kind of like a neutral ground. The third bucket is the one I was speaking about earlier, is the house on fire, the IT department in a crisis mode. And there could be 100 reasons for that, right? There's so many reasons why an organization might be in crisis. So the 100-day plan, I put 5 components in that plan. They're the same, but the context and the execution
For sure.
Is a little bit different. So the 5 for me would be, number one, listen and learn. Right? You got to walk in, and it's very important initially to not come in as a barnstormer, right? But you need to listen and learn internally and externally, right? Meaning, so when I say external to the IT department, right? So with your stakeholders, but also internal. You'll be surprised, Joe, that I've known senior leaders who are great leaders. If I would ask them, and I have asked, their underlings, they've never met them. Not the immediate reports, but people in the
let's say they got 300 people in their organization or 80 people in their organization. So the last 15 to 40.
Right, never met them. Right? No, of course, obviously it's hard to meet 300 people, but there's ways, right? There's ways you can be visible. There's ways that people feel, hey, I have a connection. So the second part of the 5 steps would be, you need to get a baseline assessment. You need to understand what it is you're working with, right? Your people, your technologies, your policies, your procedures, your governance. You need to have a good 360 view of, okay, what is the army I'm going to war with? Then the third thing is, you need to start to build trust. Again, internally with your IT department, but also externally to your stakeholder groups. Fourth thing in that 100 days, right? We're talking about the 100 days. See if you can get some quick wins. Now, paradoxically, the school in crisis, or the school with the challenges, that's actually the easiest way to get a quick win, right? Because that's where you can demonstrate real fast, hey, we have all these fires, I've identified fires. Let's take some low-hanging fruit and take care of that. It's harder for the high-performing school, but a high-performing CIO who usually also has a more political role versus a in the trenches role. But the crisis school, get a quick win is fairly easy. And then the fifth component is you need to start laying the foundation for whatever your vision is for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, right? If you don't have a 5-year plan as an IT organization that's aligned with the strategic plan of the university, you have a problem. That's literally, you're just flying blind. You just because then you're just a reactive org that's not projecting into the future. And if you don't have a destination, then you just taking orders. You're an order taker organization as opposed to one that's actually enabling opportunities. So I think those are the 5 areas that we can take a look at today, and perhaps even next time.
So let's make this a 2-parter, Fred, because in round 2, I want to dig deeper with you next week, right? But this week, let's cover some other high points. As you look at those 5 things, where does this leader, technology leader, get to engage constituents? Is that in that listen and learn segment, or was the listen and learn more so just with my own staff?
No, I think the listen and learn is it's both. It's both. It's internally. You need to introduce yourself to your organization. You need to have key meetings with your direct reports. You would ask your direct reports if there are key people in their organization that they feel will be of value to give you a briefing on a particular tool or enterprise. challenges, etc. But this is also the stage, 100%, where you start talking to your stakeholders. You should have a listening tour.
And be ready. And I think there's two kinds of listening tours I've heard of. One is, hey, I just want to ask you some basic survey-like questions. I don't want a lot of complaints. Just give me the things you're working on. I just want to assess what technologies you're using. It's kind of more like a technology stack analysis, as opposed to, look, I truly want to hear where we have let you down in the past. Where are we missing the ball? And being willing to hear all the dirty laundry and be willing to go through it and make it part of maybe not the 100-day plan, but the 300-day plan.
Yeah, but gauging the temperature and doing a sentiment audit, if you want to call it that, I think is important as well. Very easy to, especially if you do this in a group setting. For example, hey, let's meet with a particular department head, one of your stakeholders, and say, hey, can I bring my 2 people or 3 people? And before you know it, you have a 1-hour-long right session. Look, there's value in people letting off steam, but I think you need to control that a little bit and say, okay, give me a lay of the land. How do you work with IT? What's your perception of IT? Where can we do better? How can we serve you better? So to your point, I think there's a lot of value in that. And again, listening more than speaking.
Yeah, I think that's the key. One of the things you mentioned in your last step, which is laying out the strategy, right, for the next year, 2, 3. I can't think of any CIO or technology leader or soon to be CIO, right? A lot of our listeners aren't CIOs today, but intend to be someday. We'll have this vision of being more of a strategic seat at the table, right? Technology has to become a strategic seat at the table. But during the listening sessions, 90% of the time, it's going to become pretty obvious that the institution sees IT today as the break-fix shop. Provision our software, bring us laptops when we have sessions, make sure the Wi-Fi is working, that kind of stuff. That's the perception. So any CIO who plans to be there for a while, they have a 5-year vision for the job, has to also figure out, how am I going to shift perception? How am I going to shift sentiment? Any thoughts on that? How important is that to be part of the 300-day to 1,000-day plan? And how does someone go about even wrapping their head around it? Because there could be decades of poor performance in that department.
Sure, no, of course, yeah. And again, that's why I created we created the 3 buckets: the high performing, competent, and the crisis shop. They will all have a different crisis shop. They have a long road ahead of them to regain credibility within the organization. And by the way, when I say regain credibility, the unfortunate part is that sometimes it might not even be, because as we know, IT and business have to work hand in hand. Right? I cannot deliver solutions that are not intimately tied to what the business wants. And as IT, your responsibility is to make sure that the business is involved in decision making and that you're executing on a strategy that the business has defined. So, but let's assume that has fallen apart somehow, or was never actually worked on, which is one of those.
Or IT is just ignored, like the business just goes and does what it wants, and just notifies IT that a decision has been made.
Yeah. So the number one thing that new CIO can do is to gain credibility and to start changing the brand of IT is get some quick wins. That's why I said you need some quick wins, initially.
So then those quick wins, then Fred, when I'm doing my listening sessions, I'm going to listen to my internal team. They're going to identify opportunities and challenges. And then I'm going to listen to my larger constituent group. They're going to identify opportunities and challenges.
Right.
The better quick wins to me, then, it sounds like, would be the quick wins that the constituents can feel. Because I can get quick wins internally. Oh, let's change this cyber vendor. Let's do something that nobody else gives a crap about. Or I could get quick wins in how fast do an enrollment happens, or how fast, someone's able to move data from one place to the other, or access data, so that now you've got departments singing your praises very quickly, going, man, we've been waiting for this for 10 years and you solved it in 6 weeks. You're a rock star. That's what you're talking about.
And right. And unfortunately, many times the IT department in that crisis mode will be dealing with 20% of the organization. And because they're dealing with 20% of the organization, let's say financial aid, for example, right? There's all kinds of issues.
All fires, yeah.
All kinds of issues with just student finance in general, reconciliation, who knows? I mean, there's a whole host of things. The other 80% of the organization, they will be, quote unquote, dissatisfied with IT because they're not being served, because you're spending most of your time on fighting fires, right? So leaving that one aside from a, how to profile yourself, how to rebrand, I think the high performance, I think the CIO for a high performance organization, that's actually going to be one of their main focuses, right? So let's say you have a high performing organization, everything runs, right? So even if you would do nothing, runs a very well respected shop. Everybody thinks the people that work there are professionals. Tickets are taken care of easily. New technology shows up when it needs to, etc. That CIO has a different role because that CIO needs to start to think about, okay, first of all, I need to do a baseline assessment to make sure that everything that I'm seeing that works because there's actually a foundational layer to it, or it's because, I just happen to hire 5 or 6 superstars in particular positions and they just do what they do. But if one of them or 2 of them leave, then I'm in trouble. You need to figure that out fairly quick, right? Okay, is my organization the strength, or is it individuals that I'm
within the
relying on
organization?
within the organization? But for the high-performing CIO, starting to build that brand outside of IT is going to be very important. And when I say outside of IT, I not just mean internally, I mean externally as well, right? We have a good friend and client here in Miami that has spent a lot of time building a brand for his college with industry, with the towns around the school, so that now when they think about, all right, AI talent, for example, hey, let's go talk to that college or that IT department, because they have hackathons and they have workshops and they have town halls and they have all kinds of organizations where the IT department is enabling the wider community. Lev at University of Arizona talks about this. He says, I'm not just running a university. I'm running a university that has an economic impact with opportunities for the wider community. How do I serve that wider community as well? So for that level, it might be, quote unquote, a little bit easier to do what you're saying. For the competent university, for them to rebrand, you need to think about what rebranding means. Because if you're just competent, and nothing wrong with being competent, by the way, right? Just, because that's your bread and butter. For that organization to rebrand or create a certain vision, it usually means moving from an operational focus to a strategic focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, like
Running the
where
organization.
where the functional leaders, the business leaders bring you in early in the conversation and want to pick your brain. They want to know, what do you think? Here's our problem. We're thinking about making a left turn. Do you think we should make a left turn? Versus, hey, we've made a left and 2 rights. Figure it out, right? Which is what's happening now.
Yeah, one of the things, one of our clients out west earlier, where we did an organizational redesign for the IT department, was kind of to serve that purpose. And one of the challenges that a CIO will encounter, and he or she needs to wrap their head around, is, okay, the organization is run with a certain set of principles, a certain set of
values
and qualities. But are those always the best? Are they nimble and agile enough to be strategic and innovative? And by the way, it's not an either or. Just as an organization, like, for example, one of my positions, I was responsible for a legacy mainframe computer.
Okay.
With extremely high performing people, but also brand new development, web development, app development, etc. The management skills and the procedures and policies and agility that is needed to manage either one is different, right? So you as a leader can then impose the same set of expectations and, like, waterfall versus agile, for example. With mainframe development, why would you use agile? Waterfall is just fine, right? Mm-hmm. But if I need new apps up and running quickly, you need agile. You need sprints. So the ability to have different capabilities within your org becomes very, very important.
So it's almost like in our consulting practice, we have our SMEs who are on doing a lot of the work for the client, and then we have our little accelerator team that does all the problem solving, innovation, creative stuff. You're saying even an IT leader needs to think that way of their shop. So a big part of, I think it's one of your 5 things, is you got to assess your team and find out who's on the bus. Part of it is also to measure some of their entrepreneurialism, to say, okay, here's my really steady Eddies who just handle the SIS and they're really good at it. They've been doing it for 15, 20 years. Let's not rock that boat. what I call in my framework, the specialists, right? Let's give the specialists their world and their framework and their operating process. But whoever my innovative types, whoever my opportunistic thinkers are, how do I give them a different environment so that they're not being forced into the cage over here, and vice versa, right? The others aren't being let loose in the pasture going, do whatever you want. They're like, I don't want to do whatever I want. I want to do a very specific thing every day.
Yeah.
I get it. That's a good piece of advice, because I think any technology leader, whether they have a small shop or a big shop, could quickly in their mind, even right now, picture their team and go, no, we may have kind of done a one size fits all, or my deputies who report to me may have created one size fits all approaches that are hindering our ability to truly be transformation. But in the last 5 minutes we have together, let's do a second session and dive deeper, Fred. But in the last 5 minutes, maybe I haven't met with enough technology leaders yet in higher ed, but I haven't met any who feel like their department has the respect it's due. And what I mean by that is where they are, even in the high functioning, like last week, the school we were at, it's a big time school. He has 400 plus people on his team. He just took over. He wasn't giving me the vibe of, we're loved, appreciated, admired, and respected, as a department. He feels he's got a huge mountain to climb to convince the constituent groups that they are not who they think they are.
Right.
So I think this is unless you say otherwise, I think this is a real problem in IT today. No matter which of your three categories a school finds themselves in, the leader has to build a new business case, build a new brand, build a new message to market, and then prove that it's true, that they deserve a seat at the table.
I'll say one quick thing. Just Google Alpha School in Austin, Texas, which is a K-12 school, has no teachers. It has AI that teaches the students, and it's self-directed students where the teachers act as guides. There are no lectures, etc.
No instruction.
Right? No. Well, yeah, the AI does instruction to a certain extent. I'm oversimplifying, I'm butchering what they do, but what I'm saying is this is coming, right? So I think the provost and the president are going to have to spend a lot of time together.
Right. Okay. So I'll take that back. Provost and president should continue their buddy journey.
Sure.
But man, if you don't have the CIO sitting with you in 80% of those conversations, what's the point?
That's it.
Right?
And the way to do it, again, going back to it, it's a little bit of organizational design and branding. It's a branding exercise. It's a profiling exercise, but it's also, an organizational design question. Because the fact is, the reason why IT a lot of times doesn't get a lot of respect. Lack of respect is a big word. But let's just say, because it's almost like the cable company, right? Or the electric company. It's like, you don't think about them. You turn on the water. You
as
turn
long
on
as everything works.
Yeah. Everything works. So your only interaction with that organization is when something goes wrong, right? I used to run an IT support organization, and nobody calls me to say hello. Hey, Fred, how you doing? No, I have issues. Right? So I think that quote unquote utility function. I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all.
Well, we all understand that.
Yeah, there's a utility function of IT that needs to be done well. But those are not the people you want to profile as the innovators, the conversation partners that IT has, right? There's a different skill set there.
Yeah. So there's my big takeaway for today. My big takeaway for today, other than those 5 steps that any leader could just audit in their own mind, going, yeah, I'm doing all those 5. Great. Is you really have to look at your team, small or large, and figure out who your creative, innovative thinkers are. You probably already know who they are. But the question is, what specifically and strategically are you doing with them that's building your department's brand? That's going to be key, because they are what's going to build the brand as the innovative strategic group. And their wins are what are going to give you a closer and closer and closer seat to the real table where the strategic direction of the institution is going to be decided. So I think that's a great takeaway for now. Next time, let's dive a little bit deeper. Maybe I'll think of some questions. I'll even ask some of our CIO friends some questions to ask on their behalf. And we'll talk a little bit about the first 100 days, the first 300 to 600 days. What are some things to do to win this game and really lead the institution into the AI generation?
The 100 days is to set the tone. You need to have a plan. It sets the tone. But it also, your honeymoon period window, it's not that long, right? So when you go into that honeymoon period, and I used to do this all the time. Well, I'm not sure how things work here. I'm just going to do what I think needs to get done. And then eventually somebody tells you, we haven't done things that way, or that's not how we do things here. It's a new one.
Yeah.
So if you have a plan and take advantage of that in the first 100 days, you're setting yourself up for greater success for sure.
Awesome. All right. With that, we'll leave you all till next week. Thanks, Fred. We'll see you all.